Uh-oh. Hi, everyone. We're live. Hey, thanks for joining us. We got a special guest today who's going to show you how to use Imitone. We have Evan Balster. He's the developer of Imitone. It's a really great piece of audio software that lets you manipulate and make sounds using your voice. It's really cool. So I'm going to flip the button and hand it over to him, and let's check out Imitone. Got it.
Hello, friends! I'm here today to show you our project Imitone. What's that? It's on? Oh, it's on. Hello! We are Imitone team. We are a small software studio made up partly of former and current independent game developers. And we make what can best be described as silly singing software. I've got a long history personally with game jams, and so I got to talking with Mike about how we could make a copy of Imitone available for free to people participating in Ludum Dare. So, Ludum Dare? Oh gosh. So, that's what we'll be showing you today. Now, Imitone normally can be obtained at our website, imitone.com. However, the very special Ludum Dare edition is available on the Ludum Dare website under Ludum Deals at these download links. That gives you essentially a copy that is free between now and the 3rd, which you can use for sound and music design in your jam games and other projects. For today's broadcast, I had a goal of showing how Imitone could be used with another piece of open source software or freeware. Originally, my plan was to do this stream using a DAW called LMMS. Linux Multimedia Studio. However, I ran into a few problems with that, specifically related to some of the sound design tricks we wanted to show today, which have to do with Imitone's ability to shape sound using exact measurements of pitch and loudness of your voice, as you see here. Essentially, most of the way people use our software is with its automatic tuning. So you put it in a scale. However, I've always seen some exciting possibilities here in the realm of sound design, because essentially you can hook it up to any old synthesizer, take the bones out, and sculpt sound with the fine movements of your voice pitch. So what we ended up settling on for today's demo is a piece of software called Waveform by Traction. Now, Waveform is a piece of proprietary software. However, there's a free version called Waveform Free, which is reasonably full functioning and is a DAW. So, once you have both pieces of software downloaded and installed, there's a small amount of setup to do to connect them together, as is the case with any DAW. And indeed, Imitone has a small library of tutorials at imitone.com/tutorials about how to set it up with a few different pieces of music software, including GarageBand and Ableton Live. In general, the process boils down to going into the audio settings of Imitone and the audio settings of the other software, making sure they're not trying to use the same microphone in general, especially if using Windows. Sometimes different pro audio apps can have a conflict when they're trying to use the same input. And then visiting the MIDI devices options in your DAW and making sure you have a connection between Imitone's app-to-app MIDI and the app-to-app MIDI in your DAW. So in Traction, these both live in the Settings tab up on the top, Audio Devices and MIDI Devices. Also, a word on latency. This is more important when doing music with Imitone than when doing sound design. But there are a few different ways that audio can come into and out of applications on Windows computers. This isn't a concern on Macs, where there's only one system. Essentially, Windows has shared audio, variously called Basic or Windows Audio or WASAPI, which has a little bit of delay, but which can be used by multiple applications at the same time. It also has exclusive audio modes, which I won't be demonstrating right now because they mess with the OBS stream. Those have less delay. So essentially, when you want fine control over the sound or music you're working with, having lower latency will be better, as it will allow you to better control the timing of the ridiculous sounds you're making. So, without further ado, let's familiarize ourselves with Traction and start creating some sounds. We can start by creating a new project using the default template. This gives us a bunch of tracks. Traction likes to think of things in terms of little chains of audio devices. We're not going to concern ourselves too much with the fine details of this. Essentially, this just means that when we want to use an instrument, we will drag it to the beginning of one of these chains. That's the idiom. So, in the Search tab over on the left-hand side of our project, we can find a whole bunch of synthetic instruments under 4OSC. By clicking the Preview button, we can try them out individually. So, let me make sure my MIDI device is connected. Interesting. Audio devices, speakers. Okay. Well, alternatively, we can just go ahead and set up our track with input from Imitone. Oh, it works better if Imitone is switched on. Delightful. If we decide we don't like a plugin, we can simply delete it. Well, that's fun. So, there's a feature, a new part of the MIDI standard called MPE, which includes improved support for pitch bend. This is pretty essential for the sort of sound sculpting we're interested in exploring today. You can enable that in Traction on pretty much any instrument by going to its options. You can find the options for an instrument by double-clicking on its plugin block and going to this little menu and checking the MPE box. What that does is it synchronizes the pitch bend range of Imitone with the pitch bend range of the instrument. Meaning, the fluid changes in pitch can move with our voice. So let's choose something a little bit more soundy and a little bit less musical, because our focus today is on how we can use Imitone in combination with DAWs to do some sound design. A lot of the instruments in DAWs characteristically have a lot of punch and envelope built into them, which isn't necessarily what you want when designing sounds. Therefore, you'll want to be a little selective and often go for something a bit simpler. In this case, Traction has a default lead, which is pretty basic and a good starting point for this. So, Let me see. Something else we'll want to do is uncheck preview whenever we install an instrument over here. A bit of an odd habit of Traction is that this preview box remains checked even after you add an instrument to a track. Something else to make sure of, because it isn't always the default, is that the input to the track should be set to imitone app to app. Just a moment, I need to let the office cat out of the office. Oof. This is Tweedle, and she is adorable. So, the next thing we often want to do when setting up an instrument for sound design is to remove any extraneous effects from it. In particular, a lot of DAW built-in instruments come with a strong reverb effect. This particular one doesn't, but many of the other presets in Traction do. So this takes the form of a little checkbox down here, which adds and removes reverberation. So let's do a couple experiments with this. We can record sounds in Traction using the record button down here at the bottom of the screen. That will record any tracks that have this little record button enabled. It is called enable disable recording. In other DAWs, this will sometimes be called arming or monitoring. So let's go ahead and try to make some jumping and landing sounds out of this particular synth. Boom, boom. You'll notice if you want to avoid getting extraneous sounds out of imitone, you can switch its auto adjust on or off, and then drag the volume gate to a level that catches the sounds you want and blocks the sounds you don't. In particular, this can be a good way to block out any extraneous echoes of your voice that happen in the room and create additional notes. Boom, 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 boom. So that sounds about right. Let's record a few of those. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Once we've recorded a little clip in Traction, again, using our record button down here, we can double click on it to see the notes inside. We can click in the on the timeline and press the play button to replay what we've recorded. And we can use Traction's export features to get the bit of audio we like. So, oops. Let's see here. The mouse tool is probably what we want to. There, that one seems pretty promising. So, by clicking and dragging with the mouse tool, we can get rid of any bits we don't like. and trim our trim this down to just the desired note. There we go. Then we can use Traction's export function to bounce out the finished audio. That lives down in this little pop-up menu in the bottom left corner. So, File, Export, Render to a file. And Traction has a lovely option to remove silence at the start and end of the file. So without that, we have a whole bunch of silence before and after this little boink. If we check that option instead, having deleted all of the other extraneous notes, we'll get just our sound effect. The last thing we'll want to do is choose where to export it. By default, this will export to the same folder as our a subfolder of our audio project. So let's call this jump.wave. Lovely. So we've just exported a silly sound effect that we made with our voice. We can then find that in our project, exported. Exported. I'm still getting used to this particular tool. File. Render to a file. Render. There we are. Good old jump.wave. So if we pop this open in a familiar audio program such as Audacity, we have a delightful little sound file, which we've shaped with our voice. Lovely. So going through a couple different techniques, a couple different particular sorts of sounds we might reasonably sculpt with our voice. Using a very simple synthesizer, often one based on a square wave, we can create a reasonable approximation of the bouncing sounds we know and love from many games. Boom, boom. However, there are a couple different ways these are sometimes designed. Sometimes it'll be a sweep, but often in other games, such as the Mario series, it's actually using musical notes to create an ascending scale to create a similar impression with more musicality to it. We can do this using Imitone's Busy preset and probably a major or a pentatonic scale, both of which have kind of a characteristically cheery attitude to them. Boom, 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 yeah. So what else do we have on our list of recipes? Similarly on the note of sort of cheery musical sounds, incidentally, what I'm doing here is I've gone back into the settings of our plugin, which again is installed in this sort of chain of audio gizmos that Traction likes to think in terms of. So in the settings for this, I can actually find all of the presets for this particular sound gizmo. The presets are useful collections of settings which mostly avoid needing to interact with these many, many confusing knobs. Previously, I discovered another fun preset was this one called Pulse Seed. However, Pulse Seed has that reverb problem we noted before. It's a bit much for a sound effect. So by unchecking the reverb box, And additionally, unchecking the chorus effect, we can tone it down a little bit. Chorus, for the unfamiliar, is a technique in sound design and signal processing that gives something a little bit more width. It makes one sound sound like three sounds happening together, and is one of the stock effects in this particular synthesizer. What I just did to change the pitch of the instrument was, over in Imitone, I used the Octave Shift buttons, which you can find off to the right-hand side of the scale option. The scale option is what I used earlier to choose the major/pentatonic scale for that sort of musicality we're looking for. So the particular sound recipe we're in right now is sort of a sound for, collecting something or hitting a goal. High-pitched musical ascending. Just a very short sound will do in combination with Imitone's automatic pitch correction. So that seems nice. Let's go ahead, delete our previous track, rewind back to the beginning. I used the home key to save a little bit of time. And let's record that. I didn't quite like that one. I want it to end on a slightly higher note, maybe something more like the central note of that scale, so to speak. What we call the tonic in music theory gives it more of a sense of resolution. And if you're designing sounds, you can just kind of experiment to find that sound that makes a better endpoint. So that'll sound more like... There we go. Not bad. Okay, so that last one I think was my favorite. Again, I can use the mouse tool to highlight all of the notes I want to delete. Just do a big box selection of them, get rid of them, and then play what's left. Okay, that was pretty good, but I don't quite like that extra note that happened right at the end. There's also some extraneous stuff down here. Now this is a little bit hard to see. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit in time. It looks like if we hover our mouse over the timeline up at the top here and use our mouse wheel, we can zoom in and get a better look at the specific timing of these notes. So, while we're playing, we can click on the timeline to bring our cursor back to that point. So the only thing I really don't like here is this extra note that's snuck in at the end because of the fluctuation of my voice. So I'll just highlight that, hit delete, and see what's left. That's it. That's exactly it. Man, when someone picks up a banana, I want it to sound like this. You have a banana now. You should be proud. You should be in a state of absolute banana collecting euphoria. So let's go ahead and export this sound. Now, because we've deleted all of the other notes and sounds, the automatic silence trimming built into this app will, again, simplify our job, save us from needing to go through this in Audacity. We have just our sound effect. You can see there's no long gaps of silence. We can compare that to the sound with the silence not removed. So let's call this banana.wave. Lovely. it is rendering, and now that is my Inform 7 directory. Boop, 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 boop. There's a lovely trick you can use to get to your render folder, which is to choose Browse in the export dialog and use the Windows context menu. I just cheat. I go up here into the address bar. I copy it. I open Explorer, and then I paste that location. And I can just get right to my banana, which is exactly what I wanted. Look at this. It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's everything I ever wanted. It's my banana sound. Imagine the absolute joy, the sheer euphoria of collecting 1,000 bananas and hearing this sound every single time. It's mind-bending. So, what's next in our list of recipes? We noted so percussive sounds have a slightly different behavior sound design wise. An example is this instrument called Space Steel, built into Traction. So if I play this sound, and in particular, I'm going to play it in pitch bend mode because this is kind of a single punchy sound. It's a lot if I sweep over a scale with it like this. It's many individual sounds. Some of Imitone's other modes, including winds and strings, can connect multiple notes together into a single continuous sound if the instrument supports it. This particular instrument does. So when we do that legato, it's not connected. Fortunately, pitch bend can almost always connect notes together as long as the pitch bend range, which is controlled by this dark little circle in Imitone, is big enough. In this case, 12 or 24 semitones is about as far as our voice is going to move. And because the instrument here supports MPE, it supports automatically synchronizing its pitch bend range to imitones. All of that is a little heady. It has to do with the language these things use to communicate. But basically, the thing to remember is for sound design purposes, lots of pitch bend is good. So, boom, 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 boom. So the difference between this and the sounds that we were playing with previously is that those sounds were sustained, meaning if I made a long sound, that energy would sustain the sound as long as the note was playing. This sound, on the other hand, gets all of its energy, so to speak, from something right at the beginning, a bit like plucking a string or hitting something. Imitone has different presets for those sorts of instruments, specifically keys and pluck. But in this case, we're doing something a little bit special, which isn't covered by either of those presets. We want specifically the combination of exact pitch and attack triggering. Sustain and attack are the basic terms for these two sort of forms of energy in sounds. Attack means upfront, instantaneous, a strike or a pluck or some event like that. Sustain means a continuing source of energy, like a violin bow being drawn across a string or somebody's breath driving an instrument. This is an attack sound. Boom, 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 boom. Let's make that a little bit louder. Traction has volume controls on each track, as well as a master volume control for the whole project. These take the form of these little blue things that look a lot like little vessels of water. I'm using the master volume because I'm lazy. Something else you'll notice is that I didn't actually switch Imitone off. It just mostly stopped responding to my voice because now it is in attack mode, meaning Imitone is actually looking for different sounds from your voice. specifically those that start quickly, like boing, 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 boing. This is something that confuses our users a little bit sometimes because they expect to get reasonably expect at any given time to get a response from their vocalizations. Attack mode's a little more discerning. A broad idea with imitone is you're imitating the sounds you want to make or the music. So let's go ahead and experiment with this funny sound. Boom, 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 Again, as a general rule, if we're getting extra sounds we don't want, that can sometimes be assigned to turn up imitone's gate volume so it catches fewer sounds. If it's not picking up sounds we do want, then we might want to turn imitone's gate volume down. Imitone's auto adjust is pretty smart, but at the end of the day, you'll usually get better results if you choose an appropriate gate level yourself. So. Something else we need to think about is, once again, we probably want to disable the reverberation. Part of the reason we often do this in sound design is because reverb is something that communicates a sense of the space you're in. In this case, the reverb built into this sound makes it sound like it's happening in a big, wide open space. It's called space steel, so, you know, outer space, etc., etc. There are actually controls in waveform that let you adjust the size of the reverb, specifically the one called size. Boom. 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 So, that said, it's the case in many game engines that reverb is built into the game engine itself and can change from space to space that the player might exist in. For this reason, we often make our sound effects dry and apply effects later. We're not necessarily going to get that fancy with a game jam, but it's something to think about. So let's find a sound effect in a pitch shift range that we like reasonably well. Boom. 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 Boing. 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 Okay. That's interesting. Has my microphone or has my webcam cut out? Oh, okay. I think it might have been, it looks like it got physically disconnected. I'll try refreshing real quick.
Okay, technical difficulties. We'll be hopefully back in a moment. Okay, so, all right. Okay. We'll edit this out in post. No worries. Okay. All right, Evan, where'd you go? Evan, come back. Ah! Okay. Does he know that he's not connected? Oh, dear. Okay. Where are you? Oh, okay. We got a camera. Good. We're getting there. And you need the... Just need the screen capture. Oh, and we're good. I'll shut up.
Sorry about that, everyone. So, and boom, 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 boom. Just as another side note, the microphone I'm using today is nothing too special. It's something folks often ask about. This is a Blue Icicle. It's a kind of a typical desktop conference call / podcasting microphone that runs for about $50. Imitone is designed to work with that or with whatever microphone you have on hand. In general, there are some benefits to microphones that are a bit larger, microphones that are shock mounted, so they don't make much sound as they're handled or as things happen on your desk, and which are shielded so that your breath doesn't blow them up too badly. Some other microphones would have made an extremely loud noise as I blew on them. So those are just little recording setup things to consider. Imitone team actually has a tutorial video that's all about sound clarity, which you can find at imitone.com/tutorials. And that is just full of all kinds of information about specific things to avoid, and a lot of which is kind of good basic tips for recording in general, but geared towards Imitone. So getting back to our sound design experiments, we've got this silly sound. We'd like to try making some, a few more little bouncy sound effects out of it. And this time around, we're carefully tuning our volume gate so we don't get an extra note. Boom, 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 boom. I like the chorus. And I like that register. So let's try recording this. That was it. That was the one. I want people to have a dopamine rush every time they jump on the mushroom. That's how this is going to go. Okay, that's it. That's absolutely delightful. File, export, render to a file. And we'll call this bounce.wave. And now for something completely different. Because we're not all making pixel platformers anymore, are we? Let's experiment with some things that are sort of more in the realm of ambiance and sound textures. So the next one I have on my list, and this was developed by kind of, again, going through the synthesizer's presets with an eye for sort of different vibes we might explore today. We've got this thing called Wave Track WMF. Now this is going back to the realm of sustained sounds. So let's sustain. So this is a pad synthesizer. This is one of those places where the ability to move your pitch freely and over long ranges will kind of shine. Let's, this time around, if we're going to make an ambiance, reverb communicates the space you're in. So we might reasonably choose to leave the reverb in, maybe tune it a little bit to get the vibe we want. I'm not a huge fan of the ringing sound in this, but the remaining sound is quite nice. And indeed, there are ways to adjust the individual sounds that are at play in this. So in this case, it says this particular sound is made of a saw and a sine. And I will be the first to say I'm, not a big expert in synthesizers, but let's try doing a little bit of surgery to this to see if we can cut out the part of this that we don't want. So what happens if we amplify this sine down to nothing using its level meter? Oh, lovely. We've gotten rid of that ringing sound we weren't interested in. Next, because I am a chump for reverb, let's just crank that way up. Let's make the space size of this reverb much bigger. And try again. Okay, that's it. I know what we're doing. We're designing a sting. Every game needs a sting. Just something to tell you, this place you're going now, it's pretty creepy, sis. So, all right. So, once again, we'll rewind to the beginning. Find our handy-dandy record button. That wasn't perfect. It actually guttered a little bit because my volume gate was a bit too high. I really want... Excuse me. That one actually guttered a bit because my volume gate was a bit too high. It cut out at the end there and it broke the sound. We really want our sting to be long and continuous. So I'm going to drop my volume gate down a bit lower because in this particular case, we wanted it to catch the sound, not to reject the sound. Something else that can be interesting to do in these situations, but which Traction doesn't support without some additional mapping, is what's called expression control. In many instruments, this will actually map the loudness of your voice to the loudness of the instrument. It doesn't quite work with Traction setup, unfortunately, at least not by default, that there are ways to make it happen using what's called MIDI mapping. We won't think about that for right now, though. We want to creep our players out. Delightful. Absolutely delightful. So I kind of made two attempts there, which if we... Excuse me? So we made two attempts there, which if we go down to our little edit zone here, hover over the timeline and mouse wheel down, we can see as basically two big long notes. The first one was a biff. The second one is the good stuff. It's the juice. So, yeah, that's the stuff. Makes my intestines turn over. So, let's go ahead and use our handy dandy sound effect exporter again. So this is again, we click the little thing at the bottom left. We go File, Export, Render to a File. We've got our Remove Silence at Start End checked. And we choose the location here, which I will just type in as Pretty spooky, sis. Oh, render. Delightful. And now we have a file in our little folder called Pretty Spooky, sis. So, I think we have time for one more recipe, he said, looking meaningfully at Mike's webcam feed. And this is really the obligatory ambient sound. This is a phenomenon I call space whales. It's kind of similar to the previous thing, but it's fun. So there's a preset called Hypnotize in 4 OSC, which sounds a bit like this. Again, this has a lot of reverb, which I already told you I'm a sucker for. But let's say, just hypothetically, our character is in some very large space, and there is something very big in the background that you'll never get to interact directly with, and it's just doing its thing. That's what this synthesizer is for. That's what exact pitch in Imitone's noodle mode is for, with a little bit of pitching down, potentially. Now, you may not be able to hear this on your speakers if you don't have bass on, so it'll be a little more obvious to some listeners if I'm using higher pitches. But yeah, these are fun, kind of creepy ambient noises here. So, and this is a good opportunity in particular to sculpt a kind of animal noise, which is good because the thing we're using to sculpt it is animal noise. So we'll switch Imitone back on. Prepare to record. Breaking up a little bit, so let's raise our gate volume so we don't catch extraneous noises. That's good stuff. A regular smorgasbord. In this case, I captured a whole lot of different sounds, which show up in our piano roll as these individual bits. We can also see a couple of these oopsies around here as in the form of very short notes. Again, we can just highlight those and snip them out. And indeed, this sort of cleanup isn't uncommon when using Imitone in a musical workflow. Although our team is diligently working on new technologies for some automated cleanup in the future. So let's listen to just a couple of these. We won't necessarily go through the clip and export rigmarole this time. Yeah, that's good stuff. Makes me want to pet it. I don't know what it is, but I want to pet it on its gigantic nose. Yeah, that's the stuff. So anyway, that is a selection of techniques for sound design in Imitone. As a general rule, these sorts of things get even more interesting where you can combine the continuous pitch aspect of imitone with control over loudness. Our team is actually planning to add some other sound sculpting parameters to the software in the near future as well. In particular, to do with the shape of your voice and mouth. We've been doing some research related to that and hope to roll them out as some interesting features that could be used to tune other aspects of sound on the fly in the future. But for now, enjoy. And that is a quick primer on imitone for sound design. If y'all come up with any interesting recipes, yeah, send us a message. We'd love to see them. Yeah, and I guess this is where I play myself out. So let's pull up. Just give myself a
Awesome. Thanks so much, Evan. Really appreciate you coming out and doing this. Yeah, thanks again. We'll and my apologies to everyone that was watching us on Twitter. It cut out like a few minutes ago, but if you're seeing this, you found the YouTube video. That's great. Anyways, yeah. So again, much appreciated, Evan, for coming out and doing this. Let's see, what time is it now? It is almost 5 my time. So.
Just as a reminder, imitone, the Ludum Dare Cafe is free until the 3rd.
Yes. Yeah, so sorry, unfortunately his audio was cut off there, but yes, the free version of imitone for Ludum Dare is good till May 3rd. So yeah, hit our deals page, download it, use it, make your jam game, tweak it a little bit if you need to after the fact, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, no, if you like it, definitely check out imitone. It's a really cool piece of software, as we hope you saw during this stream. Anyways, thanks again, Evan. All right, I'm gonna wrap things up here because I have to render a video and do a bunch of server things before we kick off our theme votes. Our final round theme votes. So that's exciting. So I'm gonna leave y'all here for those that happen to be watching and checking us out. My little hint when things will go live will be probably, I'm going to say 3 or 4 hours from now. I'm a little behind on a few things, so it'll be coming together very last minute, and then we will kick off the final round theme vote, and yeah, we can get this final round theme vote thing going. You can watch my super sad keynote video that I made. Yes, I am the keynoter, and I apologize to everyone. Okay, great. Anyways, thanks so much. We will see you in a few hours.